Have you ever noticed how people treat you differently the moment you stop letting their actions dictate your emotions? How suddenly the ones who once triggered you pause, think, and recalibrate their behavior? This is not magic. This is not manipulation. This is emotional detachment, one of the most misunderstood and most transformative skills you will ever learn. And if you stay with me till the end of this speech, you'll understand why the moment you stop reacting emotionally, the world begins to treat you with more respect than ever before. Not because you force it, but because you model it. Most people live emotionally exposed. One text message can ruin their day. One disagreement can break their confidence. One person's opinion can throw them into self-doubt. We hand our emotional power to others as if we owe it to them. But something remarkable happens when you stop doing that. When you detach emotionally, not from people, but from the need for their validation. It is then you discover a strength you didn't know you had. Detachment is not coldness. It is not shutting people out. It is the quiet, steady belief that your peace is non-negotiable. It is showing up with a calm mind, especially where chaos is expected. It is choosing dignity over reaction. The moment you stop reacting emotionally, you become unpredictable. And human nature is fascinated by what it cannot predict. People begin to pay attention. They begin to question their behavior. They begin to respect the boundaries they never noticed before, because you have taught them without a single word that your emotions belong to you. Not to their moods, not to their comments, not to their attempts to provoke a reaction. Some people will test you. They will push. They will poke. They will try to pull you into the emotional battlefield where they feel most powerful. But when you don't enter it, when you stay calm, composed, and grounded, you strip away the very thing that gave them leverage over you. And suddenly everything changes. The friend who ignored your feelings starts to consider them. The person who once talked over you begins to listen. The partner who took your kindness for granted pauses before repeating the same habits. Not because you demanded respect, but because you embodied it. Emotional detachment elevates your decision-making. You stop acting from pressure. You stop acting from fear. You act from clarity. You act from purpose. You act from a centered place where your worth is not up for negotiation. And with time, something even more powerful happens. You realize you're no longer trying to be respected. You're simply living in a way that commands it. When your self-respect rises, the respect you receive from others follows. When you stop chasing emotional validation, people stop withholding it. When you detach emotionally, you stop giving people the power to shape your sense of self. And they feel that, they sense that change in your energy. And it influences how they show up. So if you ever feel like people do not value you, if you ever feel like you give more than you get, if you ever feel like your emotions are constantly at the mercy of others, remember this: respect begins where emotional dependence ends. Detach emotionally, not from people, but from the need for approval, the fear of judgment, and the urge to react. And watch how the world adjusts to the new version of you. A version that is calm, a version that is confident, a version that is untouchable, a version that commands respect effortlessly. Not because you asked for it, but because you showed what it looks like. Emotional detachment is one of the most misunderstood human skills, often labeled as coldness, distance, or apathy. But in reality, it is the discipline of choosing clarity over chaos. It is the quiet decision to protect your inner world from the storm of unnecessary emotions. It is the choice to respond instead of react, to reflect instead of explode, and to stay centered even when the world around you becomes chaotic. Emotional detachment is not about caring less, it is about caring consciously. It is about filtering what deserves your emotional energy and what does not. When you detach emotionally, you do not become unkind, you become unshakable. Most people believe that to show love, loyalty, or commitment, they must be fully open and emotionally exposed. They believe that giving someone access to all their emotions is a form of generosity. But true generosity is measured not by the intensity of emotion, but by the stability of it. Emotional detachment teaches us that we can love deeply and stand firmly. We can be connected without being consumed. We can be invested without being overwhelmed. It gives us the space to experience relationships and challenges with a clear mind without losing ourselves in the process. Clarity is impossible when emotions lead. When you are driven by raw emotions, anger, fear, jealousy, or anxiety, your judgment becomes blurred. You say things you don't mean, you make decisions you later regret, and you allow temporary feelings to create permanent consequences. Detachment teaches you to pause. It gives you the ability to look at a situation not only through the eyes of emotion, but also through the lens of reason. It allows you to weigh what is true versus what your temporary emotions want you to believe. It helps you see people as they are, not as your insecurities paint them. When you detach emotionally, you gain control over your reactions. You learn that not every comment deserves a response, not every conflict requires your participation, and not every situation merits your emotional investment. This is not coldness, this is wisdom. Coldness shuts down connection. Detachment strengthens it because it prevents you from acting out of emotional turbulence. A calm presence creates trust, and trust creates deeper, healthier relationships. People begin to feel safer around you, not because you are distant, but because you are centered. Detachment is the discipline of directing your emotions instead of being directed by them. It is the ability to feel anger without becoming anger, to feel sadness without drowning in it, to feel disappointment without letting it define you. People who are emotionally detached are often misunderstood because society glorifies dramatic emotional expression as authenticity. But authenticity is not about expressing every emotion you feel. Authenticity is about understanding your emotions so well that you choose how, when, and whether to express them. It is about owning your emotions rather than being owned by them. Choosing clarity over chaos often requires saying no to drama, to unnecessary arguments, to emotional manipulation, and to the habit of reacting instantly. You begin to recognize when someone is trying to pull you into their chaos, and instead of diving in, you remain grounded. You stop over-explaining, overreacting, and overthinking. You start observing more and absorbing less. You stop letting others dictate your mood. Emotional detachment becomes a shield, not a wall, that protects your mental state and helps you maintain your sense of self even in difficult situations. There is a powerful shift that happens when you detach emotionally. You start to understand that your peace is more valuable than winning an argument. You begin to value solitude over forced company. You begin to appreciate silence more than meaningless conversations. You begin to see that you do not have to respond to every provocation. You realize that many emotional battles are invitations you no longer need to accept. Detachment gives you the freedom to walk away from chaos without feeling guilty for choosing yourself. This discipline also teaches you to love differently. When you detach emotionally, you love without clinging. You support without losing your boundaries. You care without sacrificing your self-respect. You begin to show up from a place of emotional balance, not emotional desperation. People may initially question your shift, but eventually they understand that your calmness does not come from distance but from maturity. When you stop reacting emotionally, people feel the shift. They sense your strength, your confidence, and your clarity. And ironically, they feel more connected to you because your presence becomes a source of stability rather than stress. Emotional detachment also opens the door to better decision-making. Decisions made in chaos are usually decisions you eventually undo or regret. When emotions run high, clarity runs low. Detachment gives you enough space to breathe, to think, and to see the situation from a wider perspective. It prevents you from making permanent choices based on temporary feelings. It helps you separate what is real from what is assumed, what is worth fighting for from what must be let go, what deserves your energy from what deserves your silence. People often mistake emotional detachment for lack of empathy. But empathy is not about drowning in someone else's emotions, it is about understanding them without losing yourself. Detachment actually enhances empathy because you can listen without becoming overwhelmed. You can support without absorbing the other person's emotional weight. You can be present without being consumed. When you detach emotionally, you bring clarity into conversations where others bring chaos. You bring solutions where others bring reactions. In a world where emotional reactivity is normalized, emotional detachment becomes a superpower. It helps you remain steady in the moments that break others. It allows you to see situations clearly, speak intentionally, and act with purpose. It frees you from the emotional roller coaster that once dictated your life. You begin to value your peace so deeply that you stop trading it for the attention or approval of others. You stop begging for understanding from people committed to misunderstanding you. You stop trying to prove your worth to those who refuse to see it. To detach emotionally is to reclaim your inner authority. It is to say, my mind is my home, and I will not allow chaos to live here. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that you choose your reactions, your energy, and your emotional investments. And when you finally embrace emotional detachment, you discover a powerful truth. The less emotionally reactive you become, the more respect you naturally command. People trust those who cannot be easily swayed. They admire those who remain composed under pressure. They respect those whose clarity stands strong even in chaos. When you choose clarity over chaos, you rise above the emotional noise that once held you captive. And in that rising, you become someone who can navigate life not with coldness, but with wisdom, strength, and grace. People respect what they cannot control, and one of the most powerful ways to become uncontrollable is to stop reacting. Human behavior is incredibly predictable when driven by emotion. People know which words will make you angry, which actions will make you insecure, which silences will make you anxious. They know exactly how to push your buttons because those buttons are visible. But the moment you stop reacting, something remarkable happens. You stop being predictable. And unpredictability, especially emotional unpredictability, creates a shift in how people perceive you. They begin to respect the space they cannot manipulate. They begin to adjust their behavior because your lack of reaction forces them to confront their own. When you react instantly, you become a mirror. Whatever someone throws at you reflects right back. If they're angry, you become angry. If they accuse you, you defend yourself. If they insult you, you take it personally. But when you stop doing that, when you choose stillness over instant emotional response, you disrupt the entire pattern. You break the cycle that others have grown accustomed to. People expect the familiar version of you, the version who reacts, defends, explains, proves, and justifies. When that version disappears, they are left with uncertainty, and uncertainty demands respect because they can no longer predict the outcome. People naturally try to control what they understand. They attempt to influence what they can anticipate. They take advantage of what is consistent and predictable. If they know you will always forgive, they take you for granted. If they know you will always respond, they manipulate your attention. If they know you will always explain yourself, they question you unnecessarily. But when you detach from emotional reactivity, their assumptions collapse. They can no longer rely on old patterns to get the reactions they once used to maintain power over your emotions. The moment you stop reacting, You begin communicating something important without words. My emotional state is not accessible through your actions. This is not disrespect. This is self-respect. This is the shift from being emotionally available to anyone who seeks access to being emotionally intentional with who deserves access. The shift forces people to rethink how they approach you. They think twice before speaking impulsively. They reconsider their tone. They weigh their actions. And this is not because you demanded respect, but because your silence, your calmness, and your lack of reaction commanded. Predictability makes you vulnerable. It gives others a map to your emotional landscape. They know where the weak spots are, where to apply pressure, and what will break you. But unpredictability removes that map. It creates a boundary without having to announce one. People can no longer find the emotional shortcuts they once used. They approach you with caution, not out of fear, but out of recognition that you are no longer emotionally accessible in the way you once were. When you stop reacting, you regain control over the narrative of any situation. You are no longer a participant in the emotional game. You become an observer. You can see intentions clearly. You can differentiate between someone who genuinely cares and someone who is provoking you for their own benefit. You can understand the silent motives behind the words spoken. And because you are not distracted by reacting, you gain the clarity to choose your response if you choose to respond at all. People respect those who cannot be easily moved because emotional stability is rare. Most individuals are ruled by impulses. They speak before they think. They act before they understand. They react before they analyze. When you choose the opposite, you become an anomaly, and anomalies attract respect. Not because you intimidate others, but because you elevate the emotional standard of the interaction. People feel the shift in your energy. They notice the calmness, the self-control, the presence. And human nature always admires what it cannot shake. There is also a subtle psychological effect that occurs when you stop reacting. People become more aware of their own behavior. When you no longer rise to provocation, the spotlight turns on them. They begin to question themselves instead of attacking you. Did I say something wrong? Why are they so calm? Why didn't they react? This shift in attention is powerful. It forces introspection. It disrupts their emotional momentum. It makes them more responsible for their actions. And this accountability is one of the reasons respect increases. They can no longer push the blame onto you because you didn't contribute to the emotional chaos. Stopping your reactions also protects your emotional energy from unnecessary consumption. Most emotional battles are invitations that you don't need to accept. By not reacting, you decline those invitations gracefully. You stay outside the emotional storm while others are caught in it. And people respect those who do not allow their peace to be disturbed easily. Your calm becomes something others subconsciously aspire to. Even if they don't say it aloud, they recognize that your control is a sign of inner strength. People will test your lack of reaction at first. They will try harder to provoke you because they want the old version of you back, the version they could control. But as you remain steady, something begins to break in their expectations. They realize they can no longer use emotional triggers as tools. They finally understand that their influence over you has diminished. And this loss of influence often evolves into respect because deep down, people honor what remains firm under pressure. Over time, your emotional neutrality changes the dynamics of all your relationships. Those who are sincere appreciate your calmness. Those who are manipulative lose their advantage. Those who are immature learn from your stability. Those who once underestimated you reevaluate you. The world begins to interact with you differently, not because you changed who you are, but because you changed how you respond, or rather, how you choose not to respond. When you stop being predictable, you force people to meet you on a higher emotional ground. They can no longer rely on drama, guilt, anger, manipulation, or pressure. They must communicate with clarity, honesty, and respect. And if they cannot meet you there, they slowly distance themselves, creating a more peaceful environment around you. Not reacting becomes a filter for the people in your life. It keeps the genuine ones close and pushes the chaotic ones away. Respect does not come from raising your voice or proving your point. It comes from emotional discipline. It comes from the quiet confidence of someone who cannot be controlled. It comes from the strength of someone who does not lose themselves to every emotional wave. When you stop reacting, you stop being predictable. When you stop being predictable, you become someone others cannot easily influence. And when people cannot control you, they are left with only one option: to respect you. Boundaries teach others how to treat you, and emotional distance is often the space required for those boundaries to take root. Most people don't realize that the way they allow others to speak to them, behave around them, and affect their emotions becomes the blueprint for how they will be treated. Every time you excuse disrespect, every time you tolerate behavior that hurts you, every time you stay silent when someone crosses a line, you are silently teaching them that this is acceptable. Boundaries are not walls meant to push people away. They are guidelines that protect your peace, your dignity, and your emotional stability. And emotional distance is the quiet force that helps these boundaries stand firm. Even when others try to test them, emotional distance does not mean withdrawal. It does not mean shutting people out or refusing connection. It means creating enough space between your emotions and the actions of others so that you can respond with clarity instead of reacting with confusion. When you practice emotional distance, you are not being cold. You are being conscious. You are separating your inner world from the chaos around you so you can protect your sense of self. This separation becomes the foundation that teaches others where your boundaries lie and how seriously you take them. When you are deeply emotionally entangled with someone, especially someone who's inconsistent or unpredictable, the lines between your needs and their behavior can become blurred. Their moods dictate your day. Their words control your reaction. Their approval becomes the fuel for your self-worth. This emotional entanglement makes it difficult to enforce boundaries because you fear losing them, disappointing them, or upsetting them. Emotional distance breaks this cycle. It gives you the space to see clearly enough to say, this behavior is not okay, this treatment is not acceptable, or this situation does not align with my peace. Healthy interactions are built on mutual respect, and mutual respect is built on clear boundaries. Emotional distance allows you to set these boundaries with a calm mind rather than an anxious one. You are no longer begging for someone to understand your worth. You are demonstrating it. You are no longer seeking approval from those who drain you. You are choosing your emotional safety. People often fear boundaries because they worry it will push others away. But the opposite is true. Boundaries do not push the right people away, they filter out the wrong ones. The people who genuinely care about you will respect your limits. The ones who don't were never meant to stay. Emotional distance also makes you more observant. When you are not emotionally overwhelmed by someone's words or behavior, you can observe patterns. You can identify when someone is manipulating you, taking advantage of your kindness, or testing your patience. You can see clearly when someone respects your boundaries and when they are intentionally crossing them. This clarity helps you decide who deserves your energy and who does not. It helps you make decisions based on facts, not feelings. And the more you practice emotional distance, the more empowered you become to enforce those boundaries consistently. One of the most powerful aspects of emotional distance is its ability to reduce emotional reactivity. When you are too emotionally involved, you might respond defensively, impulsively, or aggressively when someone challenges your boundaries. But emotional distance allows you to respond calmly. Calmness is not weakness. It is strength disguised as silence. It is the ability to protect your peace without raising your voice. It is the ability to maintain your dignity even when others try to provoke you. And this calmness makes your boundaries even clearer because people recognize that your reaction is deliberate, not emotional. People treat you based on the standards you set. If you allow someone to interrupt you repeatedly, they will continue. If you let someone's anger dictate your decisions, they will keep using anger as a tool. If you allow someone to disrespect your time, they will assume it has no value. Boundaries correct these assumptions. And emotional distance gives you the stability to enforce those boundaries without apology. You stop explaining yourself excessively. You stop justifying your needs. You stop softening your boundaries for people who refuse to respect them. You learn that a simple no, a quiet withdrawal, or a shift in behavior can communicate more than any long explanation ever could. Healthy interactions thrive when both people understand where the line is drawn. Emotional distance helps create that line because it prevents emotional overwhelm from clouding your judgment. You can communicate your boundaries clearly, what you will tolerate, what you won't, what matters, and what crosses the line. When people see that you are consistent, when they recognize that you stand firm, they adjust. They learn that they cannot treat you casually. They learn that your emotions are not tools for their convenience. They learn that your presence is a privilege, not a guarantee. Some people will test your boundaries. They will push against your emotional distance because they benefited from the previous version of you. The one who accepted too much, forgave too quickly, or reacted too easily. When those people test you, your emotional distance protects you from falling back in old patterns. Instead of reacting, you observe. Instead of collapsing into guilt, you stand grounded. Instead of fearing their response, you trust your decision. Over time, even those who resisted your boundaries begin to understand that the rules have changed. They behave different because they know the old ways no longer work. Emotional distance also helps you value yourself. When you create space, you begin to see where you are allowing yourself to be treated poorly. You notice the conversations that drained you, the relationships that confused you, the people who took more than they gave. This awareness strengthens your self-respect. You start choosing differently because you feel differently. Boundaries become less about controlling others and more about honoring yourself. Emotional distance becomes less about distancing from people and more about connecting deeply with your inner peace. Healthy interactions require two people who know how to communicate, respect, and coexist without crossing each other's emotional limits. Emotional distance makes those limits visible. It transforms your presence. It changes the energy you bring into every interaction. People begin to see you not as someone who bends under pressure, but as someone who stands steady. Your boundaries become undeniable, not because you announce them loudly, but because you live them quietly. In the end, emotional distance is not an escape from connection. It is an elevation of connection. It ensures that the people around you treat you with the respect, consideration, and empathy you deserve. It teaches others that your emotions are valuable, your peace is non-negotiable, and your presence should not be taken for granted. Boundaries teach others how to treat you, and emotional distance gives those boundaries the strength to be respected. When you embrace both, You create the foundation for interactions that are healthier, deeper, and more aligned with the person you are becoming. Calmness is power in every relationship because the one who stays centered ultimately influences the entire environment. Human interactions are shaped not just by words, but by energy, tone, tension, body language, emotional signals, and the unspoken atmosphere created between two people. When you remain calm, you become the anchor in that atmosphere. You become the steady presence in a world filled with emotional highs and lows. Calmness is not about suppressing what you feel. It is about mastering how you express it. It is the strength to remain steady when others waver, the wisdom to pause when others push, and the clarity to see the truth when others are blinded by emotion. In every relationship, whether personal or professional, emotions tend to bounce back and forth like a chain reaction. One person's fear feeds another's anxiety. One person's anger ignites someone else's defensiveness. One person's insecurity triggers another's frustration. This emotional contagion can escalate even small issues into major conflicts. But when someone introduces calmness into that emotional mix, everything shifts. The energy lowers, the pace slows, the tension dissolves. Calmness interrupts the chain reaction. It becomes the reset button that brings the dynamic back into balance. People often misunderstand calmness as indifference, but true calmness is rooted in awareness. It allows you to understand what is happening without being consumed by it. It helps you listen deeply, evaluate clearly, and respond intentionally. In relationships, calmness signals emotional maturity. It shows that you can hold space for another person's feelings without losing control of your own. This kind of presence creates trust, not because you agree with everything, but because you remain grounded regardless of what is happening around you. When you stay centered, you become harder to provoke. This alone gives you immense power in relationships. People who cannot be provoked are people who cannot be controlled. Your reactions can no longer be manipulated. Your emotions can no longer be used against you. You are not pulled into emotional chaos just because someone else is drowning in it. You become the person who lifts the atmosphere instead of sinking into it. And people feel that difference. They might not articulate it, but they sense your strength, your steadiness, and your clarity. Calmness also enhances communication. When conversations become heated, most people listen to respond rather than listen to understand. But calmness gives you the patience to truly hear the other person, not just their words, but the emotions underneath. This deeper listening prevents misunderstandings, reduces conflict, and often reveals what the other person is struggling to express. In relationships, people crave being understood more than they crave being right. A calm presence delivers that understanding without judgment or pressure. In moments of conflict, calmness becomes leadership. It allows you to guide the conversation instead of being guided by emotion. You can ask better questions, diffuse tension with your tone, and bring the focus back to resolution rather than escalation. This kind of leadership does not dominate, it elevates. It helps both people feel safe enough to express themselves honestly. It creates an environment where problems can be solved rather than avoided or intensified. Calmness becomes the silent influence that shapes the direction of the relationship. Calmness also protects your inner world. It shields you from absorbing unnecessary emotional energy. Without calmness, you internalize the stress, anger, or anxiety around you. But when you remain centered, you observe emotions without carrying them. This emotional separation is not cold, it is healthy. It allows you to show compassion without sacrificing your mental stability. You can support others while protecting yourself. And that balance is essential in any long-term relationship. People naturally gravitate toward calmness. When someone stays centered, others instinctively adjust their tone, soften their approach, and match the energy being modeled. Calmness encourages others to slow down, think more clearly, and reflect before reacting. This influence is powerful because it is subtle. You are not demanding respect. You are earning it by embodying emotional stability. You are not forcing others to behave better. You are inspiring them through your presence. Calmness communicates without words that the environment is safe, stable, and grounded. In relationships, the calm person becomes the emotional thermostat. They set the temperature of communication, the pace of the discussion, and the tone of the interaction. Heated arguments rarely escalate around calm people because their energy dissolves the heat. Insecurity loses its grip because calmness does not feed it. Anger loses its power because calmness does not fight it. Even anxiety softens because calmness does not amplify it. Your centeredness becomes the emotional center of the space. Staying calm also allows you to see people more clearly. When your mind is not clouded by emotional reactivity, you can observe intentions, patterns, and behaviors with greater accuracy. You can differentiate between someone who is expressing hurt and someone who is projecting insecurity. You can see when someone is trying to manipulate the situation and when someone is genuinely struggling. This clarity helps you decide how to respond with wisdom rather than impulse. The calm mind is not easily deceived because it is not easily distracted. Calmness protects relationships from unnecessary damage. Most conflicts escalate not because the issue is truly big, but because reactions make it big. A calm reaction diffuses emotional intensity. It keeps the issue small so it can be addressed rather than exploded. Many relationships break under the weight of emotional overreaction. Calmness prevents this. It allows you to speak with intention, act with integrity, and love with clarity. It keeps the connection stable even when challenges arise. Calmness is also deeply attractive. In a world where people are constantly overwhelmed, stressed, An emotionally reactive calmness becomes a rare and valuable trait. It signals confidence, clarity, and inner strength. People feel drawn to someone who can think clearly under pressure. They instinctively trust someone who does not lose control easily. Calmness becomes a form of charisma, not the loud, attention-grabbing kind, but the quiet, grounding kind that makes people feel safe and understood. The power of calmness lies in its consistency. Anyone can be calm for a moment, but the one who remains centered over time becomes unforgettable. Their presence becomes a refuge. Their words hold more weight. Their decisions inspire confidence. Their relationships deepen because people feel seen, heard, and respected around them. Calmness transforms not only how others treat you, but how you treat yourself. It brings you closer to your values, your truth, and your highest self. The one who stays centered influences the entire environment. Not by force, not by control, but by example. Calmness is not merely a reaction, it is a choice. A choice to rise above emotional turbulence. A choice to respond with intention. A choice to protect your inner world. And with every choice, you reshape the dynamics around you. Calmness does not make you passive, it makes you powerful. It makes you the stabilizing force in every relationship. The one who holds steady when others drift, the one who influences not through dominance but through emotional strength. And in that quiet strength lies a power that transforms every connection you touch. Self-respect is not a loud declaration, nor is it a demand you place on the world. It is a quiet energy, a presence that tells others what is acceptable and what is not before a single word is spoken. When your emotions serve you instead of serving others, something fundamental shifts in the way people respond to you. You stop chasing validation. You stop bending out of shape to be liked. You stop sacrificing your standards to avoid disappointing someone. Instead, you begin moving through life with a sense of inner authority. And that authority influences how others treat you, because people instinctively mirror the boundaries, confidence, and composure they see in front of them. When you respect yourself, you no longer let your emotions be puppeteered by external circumstances. You stop letting people's moods dictate your mood. You stop letting their approval shape your identity. You understand that reactions are choices, not automatic responses. And when you choose to stay centered, measured, and intentional, people notice. They may not comment on it directly, but they feel the difference. You become someone whose presence naturally commands more consideration, not because you ask for respect, because your energy makes disrespect feel out of place. When your emotions serve you, you stop over-explaining yourself. You stop giving long justifications to make others comfortable. You stop apologizing for things that don't require an apology. You stop allowing guilt to be used as leverage against you. You stop allowing anger to be used to control you. You begin to understand that emotional independence is the highest form of personal freedom. It frees you from people pleasing, from overthinking, from the constant pressure to be liked. And when you free yourself from those chains, people sense it. They interact with you differently because they know they can't manipulate your emotional state for their own benefit. Self-respect also changes how you communicate. You begin to speak with clarity instead of defensiveness. You set boundaries without hostility. You say no without fear. You express your needs without shame. You don't make everything personal. You don't take every comment as an attack. You don't rush to fix every misunderstanding. Your tone becomes steadier. Your delivery becomes calmer. And calm communication creates respect because it shows control, maturity, and self-assurance. When your emotions serve you, you stop giving immediate access to everyone. You stop allowing your time, attention, and energy to be consumed by people who haven't earned it. You stop becoming emotionally available to those who drain you. People begin valuing your presence more when it's not freely accessible. Scarcity creates value, not manipulation, just healthy distribution of your emotional resources. When you reserve your emotional energy for those who treat you with care, the world adjusts. People either rise to your standards or quietly remove themselves. Both outcomes protect your peace. Self-respect is not about being tough or closed off. It is about recognizing your worth in every interaction. It is knowing that your peace is not negotiable, your boundaries are not suggestions, and your emotions are not public property. When your emotions serve you, you cultivate dignity. You carry yourself with a subtle confidence that needs no performance. Others sense that they must approach you with integrity because your energy demands it. And it isn't about superiority, it's about alignment. You stop betraying yourself for temporary acceptance. You stop allowing others to define what you should tolerate. You stop giving power to situations that don't deserve a reaction. You recognize that your emotional landscape is your responsibility, not a playground for anyone else to interfere with. And when you take responsibility for your inner world, people instinctively treat you with more respect because you treat yourself with respect first. Self-respect also impacts the expectations you hold. You no longer tolerate inconsistency disguised as potential. You no longer ignore red flags disguised as effort. You no longer stay in places where you feel depleted. You no longer chase connections that make you doubt your worth. When you stop tolerating less than you deserve, you naturally attract relationships, friendships, and opportunities that match your emotional maturity. When your emotions serve you instead of others, you change the entire ecosystem of your life. You create an environment where respect becomes the minimum standard. People respond differently when they sense they cannot shake your stability. They become more thoughtful with their words. They think twice before crossing your boundaries. They adjust their tone. They act with more accountability. Not because you demand it, but because your inner strength inspires it. You show others how to treat you by treating yourself with consistency, truth, and care. Self-respect is not a display, it is a vibration. And when you live from that vibration, when your emotions work for you instead of against you, you rise above the need for approval or validation. You move through the world with a grounded certainty. You become someone whose presence quietly shifts the behavior of everyone around you, not through force, but through alignment, not through fear, but through clarity. Not through controlling others, but through mastering yourself. Detachment is often misunderstood as emotional withdrawal, as if choosing not to be controlled by external noise means you feel nothing. In reality, detachment is the refinement of your decision-making. It is the discipline of creating enough emotional distance to see clearly, think rationally, and act with purpose instead of reacting out of pressure, fear, or urgency. When you detach, you rise above the chaos that clouds most people's judgment. You separate your identity from your circumstances. You stop confusing temporary feelings with permanent truths. You stop letting the intensity of the moment dictate the direction of your life. And because of that, your decisions grow wiser, cleaner, and far more aligned with who you want to become. When you act from pressure, your world becomes small and reactive. Every problem feels like an emergency. Every opinion feels like a verdict. Every setback feels personal. Pressure convinces you that something must happen right now, even when the best move is to pause, breathe, and think. Acting under pressure leads to impulsive choices, quitting too soon, committing too quickly, agreeing to what you don't want, or settling for what doesn't serve you. Detachment breaks that cycle. It gives you space to evaluate the situation without being consumed by it. It teaches you to respond instead of react, to analyze instead of panic, and to choose instead of surrender. Detachment elevates decision-making because it removes emotional fog. When you are attached to a specific outcome, a specific person, or a specific timeline, your judgment becomes distorted. You begin to ignore red flags, exaggerate possibilities, and form decisions based on desire rather than truth. Detachment strips away the bias. It allows you to ask better questions. Does this choice align with my values? Does this serve my growth? Am I doing this because I truly want to, or because I'm afraid of losing something? Those questions guide you toward integrity rather than insecurity. When you detach, you stop letting people's expectations control your actions. So much of what humans call pressure is actually the fear of disappointing others or the fear of not fitting into someone else's idea of success. Detachment allows you to evaluate choices without carrying the emotional load of external judgment. You begin making decisions based on what is best for your future rather than what is easiest in the moment. And when your decisions come from purpose, not pressure, you live with fewer regrets because every move is anchored in clarity. Another advantage of detachment is that it slows life down internally. While everyone else is rushing, you learn to think in full sentences instead of emotional fragments. You see the bigger picture, not just the next 5 minutes. You learn to delay gratification when needed and to cut losses when required. You stop forcing what is not working. You allow things to unfold naturally without trying to bend reality into your expectations. This inner stillness becomes a superpower. It helps you navigate conflicts, opportunities, and challenges with a calm mind that protects you from making rash decisions. Detachment also protects you from emotional manipulation. When you detach from the need to please people, their disappointment no longer controls you. When you detach from the need to win every argument, you stop engaging in battles that drain your energy. When you detach from the fear of loss, people cannot use urgency to push you into choices you'll regret later. Your emotional independence creates an invisible armor around your decision-making. People sense that you cannot be pressured, rushed, or guilted into actions that don't align with your purpose. And that alone elevates the quality of your relationships and interactions. Acting from purpose means you understand your why. It means your decisions are connected to your long-term identity, not your short-term emotions. Detachment creates the space to reconnect with your purpose again and again. When you feel overwhelmed, detachment lets you step back and ask what matters here. What do I want my life to stand for? What does the future version of me need right now? Those questions lead to decisions built on wisdom rather than panic. The more detached you become, the more powerful your presence becomes. People trust those who remain calm under pressure. Opportunities come to those who don't scramble in desperation. Respect is earned by those who choose intention over impulse. Detachment makes your decisions look effortless because they are not clouded by chaos. You move slower but wiser, quieter but stronger, calmer but more influential. Detachment also teaches patience, which is essential for making strong decisions. When you detach from urgency, you understand that the right opportunities don't need to be forced. The wrong ones don't need to be chased. You learn to let go of anything that feels heavy, unclear, or misaligned. You learn to hold on to what is consistent, supportive, and aligned. You learn that clarity grows in silence.